everyone. I'm Denise Gorant. Welcome to Bite Your Tongue, the podcast. Thanks for joining us as we speak with experts, authors, parents, and even young adults to explore the transition from parenting our young children to building healthy relationships with our now adults. Hopefully we'll grow together, learn about ourselves, our young adults, and of course, when to bite our tongues. We are so happy you're with us, so let's get started. Hello, everyone. We're on it. That's what we're calling our special episodes that answer listeners' questions. This month, we're answering a question that actually came from a handful of listeners. How do we talk to our adult children when we believe that they may be truly participating in dangerous behavior? This question is also linked to vaccine hesitancy. How do we talk to our adult children who refuse to get the COVID vaccine and hence are not vaccinating our grandchildren? This can be a painful experience for many who have a great desire to see their adult children and grandchildren. But don't worry, listeners, we're on it. We've done some research and found two great experts to talk to us about this issue and also offer some advice and suggestions. The first expert you may remember. We interviewed Dr. Susan Heitler in episode 7, Talk the Talk. She is truly an expert relationship therapist and at that time gave us some great techniques. You might remember her with agree and, but no buts. We thought we'd welcome her back. She might have some great tools, some great words, and great advice. Welcome, Dr. Heitler. Thanks for coming back again to Bite Your Tongue. We're so glad to have you.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I have to tell you, after your last episode, I had so many people text me and say, agree and no buts. So it was really wonderful. So this episode, we're going to try to answer some of our listeners' questions. And we've had a few listeners write to us about what a parent's response should be when their child is engaged in what they believe is truly dangerous behavior. For me, it's a little hard to define dangerous. But the one that pops into my mind is how concerned I might be if my adult child chose not to get a COVID vaccine. And as you might guess, many listeners are concerned about that. And then it translates to the grandchildren because they aren't getting the children vaccinated, so they can't see their grandchildren. So that's sort of one. But there's many others: cigarette smoking, drugs, abusive relationships. You see your child in a relationship that's, the husband or the wife is abusing them. Medical conditions they might have that they're not treating. I'm sure there's a lot, and maybe some of them have overlap, but how do you approach your adult child when they really are doing something that you believe is truly dangerous?
It's a great question. On the extreme ends, you don't go and say, don't do that. They're an adult. They can vote, they can make their own decisions. So telling them what to do or not to do is a loser. On the other hand, the other extreme is not saying anything. That's also irresponsible. So what do you do if you don't want to tell them what to do and you don't want to say nothing? What you do is you engage them in a discussion of the underlying concerns, your underlying concerns and their underlying concerns. Shall I keep going, or do you want to?
Yes, let's play with that a minute. Last time we did a little bit of role playing. So let's say that I'm the adult child and my children and I are not going to be vaccinated. We just feel very strongly that there's not enough known about the vaccine, and we would prefer to take the risk of getting COVID. And we want to come and visit you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first thing I want you to know, honey, is how much I love you and how much I love the kids, how deeply I care about you.
I know that, Mom. You're so good about that.
Phew. Okay. So in that spirit, I'd love to, first of all, to understand better what's behind this decision you're making. And then I would love if you can also hear what my concerns are. And you're going to make your own decision.
Well, I think you know my concerns. I don't think there's enough information about the vaccine. A lot of my friends around where I live are not getting vaccinated.
Oh, hold on just a minute. I want to digest these one by one. You say there's not enough information about the vaccine. Like what additional information would you want to know?
I don't know. I read somewhere that it can, maybe it will stunt the growth in my children. Not enough people have taken it
Mhm.
yet.
Well, those are definitely would be real concerns. I've been looking at the science, and it's interesting that those have not come through in the reports that I've been reading as actual after effects. And at the same time, I'm sure there's people who worry about those things.
Okay.
What did I do? Let's talk about what the technique is so far.
Well, you agreed with what I said, so you did the agree. I'm sure.
And the agreement wasn't, I heard what you said, or just kind of flipping it off. I tried to find some way to really augment it and then add some information.
When you say augmented, you said, I hear what you, how did you say it? You said,
Yes, there are people out there
yes,
who are saying this.
yes, yeah.
And I've read that there's a number of what appear to be false rumors out there that are prevalent on the internet.
You agreed, sort of, but with, yes, there are a lot of people saying that. Okay.
And that's why, because if those were really consequences, I would be very worried about it.
Okay.
I would be less enthusiastic myself. Fortunately, there's a lot of science that's been done on this and testing.
And then if you
Keep
get to a
going.
point, you do all this, and the kid says, I'm sorry, mom, you could talk to your blue in the face. I'm not getting vaccinated. Then you just have to stop. Is that right? And not see them?
Yes, you at any point you say, I want to reassure you, it's your choice.
Right.
Now, you can always use the emotion card. I want to back up a minute though. It's a good idea to ask them their concerns first.
Uh-huh.
It may be a better idea when they say they're concerned, just write each of the concerns out so you can come back to them, a bullet point list, rather than do what I did just now, which was to respond one by one to the concerns. So that would sound like, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of people out there saying that it could do this or it could have that bad effect. So I'm going to write that on my list. You're worried that there's bad side effects. And after each bullet point that she gives you, you actually write it down so she knows you're taking it seriously, and you can go back and discuss them one by one. First, you want to encourage her to explain to you, to get them all out on a piece of paper. And then in the same list, not as pros and cons, or not as me versus you, you say, I would like to add my concerns to this list, because all your concerns and all my concerns need to count.
I think that's really good. And the way you're speaking is also important. I had a situation where it wasn't a child, but I was going somewhere and the person said, they're not getting vaccinated. And I didn't do any of what you're telling me to do. I said, I can't believe you're not getting vaccinated. How could you come to this wedding and not be vaccinated? It would have been more appropriate to use your method even then.
It's hard to know. Sometimes a little shock value. What? You're going to a wedding and you're not vaccinated?
I mean, the one thing that I've done with this, and I wonder whether this would help with people that have, particularly with the vaccine, I said, I respect whatever your opinions are that you don't want to be vaccinated. But before you come, I really need you to have a COVID test.
Remember we talked about but and?
Okay.
It's up to you what you do or don't do. And at the same time, which pauses a little and gives her a chance to really listen, it would be vital to me that you get a COVID test before you come, because it's one thing for you to decide for yourself, quite another thing to bring COVID into a public place, especially where there's going to be kids who haven't been able to get a vaccine.
Let me go from COVID. I know your time is really limited, but I want to talk about alcohol.
That's a great example.
That's another one where you suspect your child is drinking too much. And, you might even suspect alcoholism. I don't know how you identify even alcoholism. So how do you approach your adult child? Maybe it's even your adult child's partner, but you see this drinking a lot.
Right. So the tool you want to use primarily is questions. Gee, I noticed a lot of empty bottles in your house. Who's the drinker? When do they drink? Good questions begin with how or what, and sometimes who and when. They're journalistic questions. They're not, are you, did you?
But if you said that to me, I might say, "What are you asking me that for? This is my house. I don't know. I have people over and we drink. Why are you even asking that?"
Gee, I'm a little concerned at how upset you sound. This is actually an issue I'd love to be able to talk about with you in a quiet way.
It's really none of your business.
You're right. Always, the customer is always right.
Right.
You're right. On the one hand, it's none of my business. You're a grown up. Who drinks, how much they drink, that's their business. And at the same time, I love you so much and I get concerned.
Keep your concerns to yourself.
Well, I can do that. And at the same time, I think it would be reassuring if I could at least ask you some questions so I understand more what's going on.
Boy, that is really good. I mean, I was pretty mean to you right now, and you reacted
Yeah.
so well. And so you settled me down, because at that point, I would probably say to you, "Okay, Mom, what do you want to talk about?"
Well, I think what I want to talk about is remember Uncle George? I didn't know it until I was much older, but Uncle George actually really undermined a lot of good things in his life by drinking so much. And once I understood that, it made me very sensitive to alcohol. So I would love to be able to discuss it quietly with you.
I mean, if I was being adversarial, I might
Right.
say, "Well, I think you drink a lot too."
You know what? I agree with you. I'm beginning to take a look at what I drink, when I drink, how much I drink. It may be fine to have one drink in the evening. Dad and I sit down together. And at the same time, you're right. I'm drinking more than that. I'm very concerned. The customer is always right. The answer is always yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's terrific. Can you think of anything else that would be helpful to people concerned about this, or how to address their adult children with these kinds of things?
There's a funny phenomenon that happens if you ask multiple times over time.
That's me.
Uh-huh. It can be effective, actually.
Oh, I think it's ineffective, but for me, at
You
least.
have to see,
Okay.
sometimes you ask them once and with a light touch, gee, what's the story with the alcohol? And then a few days later, you say, I'm still thinking about alcohol. But tell me again, help me understand who's drinking how much and what's the goal? And I'll tell you my favorite question.
Okay.
I call it best possible light.
Best
Gosh, honey,
possible light.
yes. If you look at in the best possible light at how much you've been drinking or your hubby has been drinking, whatever, what's it intended to accomplish?
Well, I'm really stressed out at work, and it makes me feel better when I get home.
It's so important that you be relaxed at home and that you find a way to de-stress. What might be an equally or more effective way to de-stress that wouldn't have the consequences that so much alcohol might be having?
I've tried so many things, Mom. I've exercised. I've even tried meditating, but that beer just really makes me feel good.
Uh-huh. It's your life. And at the same time, I would be glad to talk with you about what it is about work that makes it so stressful. And also, I'd be glad to join you in looking for ways to calm down and to get into a very peaceful mode.
Well,
There's
you
got
make
to
me
be.
nervous as it is. I feel like you're judging me.
Uh-huh. Yes, I could. It's always yes. Yes, I could easily come across that way. And I'm not sure what's the difference between judging and just being worried. What I experience is I'm just worried for you. I want the best for you.
Very, very
Yeah,
good.
and I think you nail on the head when you said tone is so important.
I've always thought that with you, and I've practiced so much my tone, at least when I'm with my kids, because I have a harder tone. I just do. I have my whole life.
Yes, we learn the song, the music of a language, usually from our family of origin,
Yeah.
the speed at which we speak, the style. And it's like learning another language to practice a calmer tone.
Yeah, I will. Well, I really appreciate this.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a delight to see you.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In an effort to get the best information for our listener questions, this listener question is two-part. The second part, we're speaking today with Rupali Lamai, PhD, MPH, MA, who serves as a full-time faculty member at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. She's widely recognized throughout the world as an expert in vaccine behavior, including vaccine hesitancy and acceptance. She's been in great demand on most television shows, podcasts, news media, talking about this whole idea of vaccine hesitancy. Her resume is extensive, and there are many links I'll share about her in our episode notes. But today she's joining us to help answer our listener question about her adult children not getting the COVID vaccine. We're hoping that Rupali will give us some words to use, as well as tools and advice on how to approach this conversation with our adult children. Welcome, Rupali. We feel so honored to have you with us. Do you want to tell us anything more about yourself that might be helpful to our listeners as we get started? Particularly, why the interest in vaccine hesitancy?
Yeah, so I actually got interested in vaccine hesitancy about 10 years ago. I'd been working in HIV and AIDS for almost 10 years before that, and then realized I wanted to do something a bit more domestic speaking, as I had just, gotten pregnant with my first child.
Oh,
And then it sort of,
congratulations.
yeah, and then it really took off. And I think the only other thing I would add is that, since the pandemic has started, I've probably spoken to about 3,000 vaccine hesitant people. So I've had quite a few conversations with people that are just really trying to navigate and make a decision about the COVID vaccine specifically.
Our podcast, as you know, is parents of adult children. A few of our listeners have written in to say parents are struggling with adult children who are saying we're not getting vaccinated, hence the grandchild's not getting vaccinated. And so they feel like it's stopping them from being able to visit them. They're very frustrated. One woman in particular works in the medical industry. She had always thought her daughter believed in science and all of this, and suddenly she's finding they won't get vaccinated. As parents of adult children, we have to be it sounds like you are an adult child to someone. And
that's right.
Right. And so that we have to be very respectful of their opinions. They are going to differ on many issues. Generations change. And this is a tough one because we have to respect who they are and have some sort of respect for them not getting vaccinated, but it puts all of us at risk. So what's our strategy?
Yeah, I think the biggest strategy I will say about all of this is to make sure expectations are clear. And I think that's a challenging one. So, for example, if there is an expectation perhaps that holidays will be spent together, for example, what level of comfort are you comfortable with regards to risk and vice versa? So I think having that conversation early and being transparent about those expectations are really important. So I think that's number one. I think the second piece is, to your point, is to be respectful and not dismissive if there are concerns. And I think the biggest thing that I have learned is I've learned so much speaking to vaccine hesitant individuals. A lot of the reasons why people don't want to get a vaccine are really based in issues related to stigma or racism or discrimination or some other interaction, I would say, with the healthcare system that has left them with a very negative view of the healthcare system. And so I think it's very important to not be dismissive. The third thing that I would say is to make sure that decisions are being made using evidence-based information. The biggest challenge that we are facing right now, especially with regards to COVID vaccines, is really this idea that misinformation is really fueling a lot of these decisions. And a lot of these individuals that are afraid to get the vaccine or don't want to get the vaccine are doing it on information that is simply not accurate. So really making sure that the types of sources that you are recommending to your adult children or having conversations with your adult children is really critical. And I think the last piece with all of this is coming at all of these conversations and these discussions is with empathy. And I know that sounds very simple, but it's pretty incredible how challenging that can be for a lot of people because individuals get heated. It's really emotional, this decision. And so it's really important to be empathetic and understand that we're all trying to figure out and navigate this crazy world that we're now living in with regards to COVID and the new variant that's now happening. So we're dealing with these conversations all over again, to be honest with you.
So, with those things that you mentioned, I'm going to ask you two things. One, I think that idea of misinformation is really critical, except how do you know what to trust? Nowadays with social media, even the television news, you're not sure what to trust. So, when you're navigating this and trying to share information with your adult children, where do you think is the most acceptable information that would be something that both might accept?
Right. It's a really good question. What I try to do is I try to shy away from, unfortunately, because of what's happened with COVID, while I support the CDC, I think it's taken quite a beating with regards to credibility with everything that's gone on. And so what we try to do is essentially find sources. There's one, some of them are just like my local epidemiologist, for example. Some of them are local health departments. And so trying to find, I think, more specific, contextual, specific resources to point people toward. My biggest concern is that I want to make sure that individuals are talking to someone that they trust. So if they don't trust their healthcare provider, then that's not someone that they should be talking to about a vaccine decision, right? There are other resources that we can point people to that is not their healthcare provider. The key here, though, is thinking about, in my opinion, local influences and local information sources that people may be more apt and comfortable listening to and obtaining information from.
And everything you say is true, but I know with one listener in particular, they live in the East and their son, I think in his family, lived down south in a state that the local information is basically saying no mask, don't worry. I think they encourage vaccination, but not at the rate that they do in some of the states that are more fully vaccinated. So even locally, you can get misinformation and such from your governor, your mayor, that sort of thing. And that makes it even more of a struggle between the parent and the adult child.
Absolutely. And I think what we're finding is that, to your point, there's so much information out there that it's really hard to navigate and say this is true and this is not true, right? So we're actually working, it's interesting that you're bringing this up because we're actually working on a short course that'll be less than an hour long that really helps people navigate these conversations. So if someone has a question related to X, like the one question we get all the time is, why was the process so rushed? We go through and we talk about, actually, here was the vaccine development process. mRNA vaccines have been in development for 40 years. A lot of people don't know that. And so we're essentially developing a course for how to talk to your peers about vaccines and so that they feel more comfortable having these conversations.
And will that be available? Will there be, I did see your YouTube, you had a YouTube on 10 questions all about the vaccine, which I'll share on my episode notes. Will the thing you're talking about also be available?
It'll be 100% available. It's going to launch the first week of January. It's going to be a Coursera course. So a lot of adults
are familiar. I didn't hear what you said. Coursera course. So not Johns Hopkins. What's Coursera?
No, Coursera is just another sort of online free. They're all free. And they're courses that you can take. And it's essentially just a platform to be able for us to put resources and information on. So we're developing this course, again, particularly for parents, to talk to really other parents, right? But I think the applicability will really be for anyone, because what we go over very basics of here's the immune system, here's the vaccine development process, here are key concerns people have, here's how you identify misinformation, and then here are key communication techniques that you can use to navigate these conversations. So it's really those 5 modules.
I love that. And I'm going to definitely, this probably won't drop until the beginning of January. So hopefully
perfect.
It'll be available and I'll be able to add that on there. So my second question with the things that you said was, you said, approach it with empathy. This episode, answering the listener questions, we first talked to a psychologist and she talked a lot about that, and then you sort of the facts and figures. But when you think of approaching someone with empathy, how do you start the conversation? How would you start the conversation with empathy?
Yeah, there's a number of different techniques that you use here. Essentially, you can start really the conversation to be like, how are you feeling about everything, right? And starting, not just simply saying like, are you going to get the vaccine? So to talk about things like, how are you protecting yourself? I really care about you. I want to know what kind of things that you're doing. What kind of questions do you have? How can I help you come get through this? How can I help you problem solve? So a lot of it is having some of these open-ended questions where we allow individuals to tell us what they're concerned about, right? That's the first. The second is essentially being careful not to be dismissive. The number one thing that I have heard speaking to vaccine hesitant people is that people always tell me that there's a microchip in the vaccine. I don't dismiss that concern. I explain to them what is the vaccine development process, how it went through, who were the different people that looked at that data, by the way, which is a huge number of independent reviewers that look at that data, and how it came to the market. And so to me, it's also not being dismissive. The third is allowing people to, I think, voice their concerns and really doing active listening is what we call that, and allowing people to reflect back. And again, making sure that you are allowing people to, kind of walk through their problems. And again, I know all of this to many people sounds very straightforward, but it's really not. I think we definitely want to be more directive. And the goal here is not to be directive, is to allow people to process, and then to literally at the end say, here are some evidence-based resources that I'm happy to share with you. If you want others, I will find others for you. But again, it's really playing a resource role for these individuals and not being like, I know better than you do, and having that kind of an attitude.
Absolutely. My last question before I'm going to wrap this up. You've talked to over 3,000 people. What do you think in those conversations, how many have changed their mind after getting some of this evidence-based research and talking, as you say, it's going to be solved talking to people? How many minds do you think get changed?
It's a great question. And I think that for me, if I talk to 10 people and if I can change one person's mind, then I think it's success. The one thing that I've learned in speaking with these people is a lot of these individuals simply do not have access to evidence-based information. I don't think they're fundamentally opposed to vaccines. Some people are, but a lot of it is that people really do not know where to go to get this information so that they can make an informed choice, so that they can protect themselves and their family. I know there are certain members, I've gone to a number of churches, and certain members have reached back out to me and just said, thank you so much for just having a conversation with me. I've decided to schedule an appointment. And so for me, if you can change one person's mind out of 1,000, right, that is still a way forward. And this summer has been really interesting. I have 2 kids under the age of 12, and I can't tell you how many different moms that I know that said, hey, do you mind talking to my friend? She's not sure if she wants to get the vaccine. And so I had a lot of pool conversations this summer with a lot of families in our community, just to say, here's what I know. I can explain to you this. Let me tell you about the side effects. Let me answer any other questions that you had. And so I think that was one way that we could really make a difference here locally in my own community.
And that makes perfect sense. Listening to you, I would love you to talk to everybody I know, because you can answer their question. We're at a handicap. We can only give them information that we have. But I think this course that you mentioned is going to be really great.
So, yeah, we're excited about it. We're really excited. We're finishing it up this week. So it's been a little crazy, but yes, we hope to get it out very soon.
Rupali, we always end each episode with asking our guests to give 2 takeaways that they'd like our listeners to take away from what they offered today.
Okay.
What can you offer? Just, that you want to make sure they remember.
The first thing that I would say is that the way that we are going to increase vaccination rates in this country is through one-on-one conversations. It is not through campaigns. It's not through policy. It's by individuals being empathetic, listening to someone's concern, helping them navigate that decision-making process, and helping them problem solve. So that's number one. I think the second thing that I would say is that we've been living in a time of uncertainty for a long time. Everyone wants to reduce that uncertainty. So anything we can do to be supportive, to link people to resources, is really critical. And again, I think these things are 2 simple things that you can do. You can do these for your neighbors. You can do these for your adult children. You can do these for teachers in your school. But again, it will go a long way to rebuilding the trust that we have in one another and the trust towards the healthcare system.
Well, you can really tell that you've worked really hard on this, because you've got it really down. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate your taking this time, because I know you're in great demand. I read about you so many places. So I thank you so much for joining us today. Let's see, if we have 1,000 listeners, we'll change 1 or 2 minds. Okay.
Great.
Well, good luck.
Thank you so much, Denise.
Well,
and happy
holiday with your family. Thanks.
Yes, you as well. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, that's a wrap for our first We're On It episode. I know we focused more on COVID, but it seems to be a timely topic right now. I hope the listeners who reached out with this question will let us know if we provided the information they needed. We hope so. And for the rest of you, let us know what you're thinking or what you'd like us to explore. Just email us at biteyourtonguepodcast@gmail.com. We'll certainly get on it. So look for another episode to drop in 2 weeks. Keep following us on social media. And remember, once again, sometimes you might just have to bite your tongue.